In today's webinar on workforce energy management, we're going to be talking about burnout isn't the problem. Your energy drain is the problem. And what I'm seeing over the last couple of years about speaking on workforce burnout is it's still here. People are still stuck in their cars, not wanting to go into work, having those Sunday scaries, not ready for the week, or still managing all that energy that we have seemed to have lost over the years. How do we navigate this change with ease when change has been here and change will always be? And so, what I'm seeing across industries, across positions, is change is moving faster than ever. Process, product, people. How do we keep up? How do we keep up with three categories shifting at such a fast pace? And right now, I'm seeing the solutions in the wellness perks. We're going to sponsor your gym membership. We're going to add another benefit through our insurance plan. But burnout is a symptom of deeper dysfunctions within work cultures and operations. It's telling you, it's signaling you that there's too many energy drains within your organization. So when you start to flip it towards root causes of the energy drains, you start to see the energy come back to your organization. You start to see the liveliness come within your organization, and it's not forced. It's a natural energy. And so when you begin shifting from wellness perks, which are a great tool, they were never supposed to be the main program. When you fix the environmental factors, that's where that natural energy will come from. So what we're going to talk about in this episode is managing those energy drains, reducing those energy drains, because what we're finding is burnout is the symptom, which means we have prolonged energy depletion. We have exhausted the reserves of our teams, our workforce, and now they're burnt out. And you have to go through 12 phases to get there. So it's been here for a long time. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in different organizations in your team. And then let's talk about how to get out of it. Because if you know me, I am action oriented. My love language is acts of service. So we're going to do something about it. We're not just going to talk about it. So let's go through your list. When you think of the biggest energy drains that come out in your organization, in your team, in your days, what are those? List a few. And then I want you to rate them. One being like, yeah, it's there, but like I can rebound from it pretty good. And three being, yeah, this is a life sucker. Like I get home and I am done when this happens. And I am definitely done at the end of the week. The TGIF, like thank goodness it's Fridays, type of syndrome where you need to really recoup on the weekends. Those are the high points, the threes. And why am I doing it on a 3-point scale and not a 10-point scale is it really brings to light, especially when you do this as a team, the energy drains, where the energy sucks are, right? If there's threes across the board for meeting dysfunctions, that's your root cause, right? Start there. Certainly, there's going to be many energy drains within your organization and your teams, but you start with the big hitters, right? You start with the ones that are going to make the biggest impact. So if meetings are all threes across the board, you start with meetings. You don't focus on the ones till later. So again, hitting it where it matters most is going to start shifting that impact. So have your list, right? Here's the list from my clients over the last couple years. Constant context switching, which means you go from meeting to a different meeting, to a different meeting, to a different meeting. And oftentimes they're not even related. Different subjects, different emotions around them. You might be going even from a really rough meeting, which in HR for me was like disciplinaries, terminations, into uplifting or forward moving meetings, brainstorming meetings like, hey, we have this great top talent candidate coming in next, right? That context switching with no recovering felt like you were just kind of in like a psychotic switch at any point in time. Like, am I supposed to be happy? Am I supposed to be sad? How am I managing these emotions? And what am I carrying to the next one? So constant context switching. When you are overbooked, overwhelmed, over capacity, that will often happen. So is that a drain in yours? That comes up in my clients quite often. Urgency culture, that's the number one. Constant distractions, like I need this now. Do you remember before chats came in when we were like back in the phone call, like the hard phone call lines and the fax machines? Like it would be 24, 48 hours before you heard from someone, and now it has to be like within 10 to 15 minutes. Why? Not everything is an emergency. If you really back up as an organization, as a team, as yourself, not everything is an emergency. And as someone who loves to get stuff off their list, my inbox is literally my to-do list. Man, I was one of those people. Like, a message came in and I had to hit it. I had to work on it right now. And so when you talk about energy management, workforce energy management, that goes into it. What is actually urgent? Really define that. And what can wait? Because when we're on this constant sense of urgency, we're reducing the value that we were brought in to do. We're reducing those conversations that actually make a difference. So reducing that urgency and removing some of those constant distractions, pings and pongs, is going to aid in reclaiming that energy. So that was number 2 that was coming up in trends. The emotional labor without recovery is number 3, and that's what my goal and mission this year is aligning flex roles, flex work to people who are in need of it, top talent that is going to have a choice of leaving the workforce if they can't find it. And that's your working parents. That's the people that need to have those tight school schedules because there's no after and pre daycare services available. That's people that don't live around here anymore, right? Remote work, and they still want to be connected with your company. So there's some emotional labor going on at home, and there always was. I'm not discounting the previous years and generations that have had the struggle, but we have that flex now. We have the technology. We have new ways of working. We're here. Let's open our doors to it to make this work. There are certainly positions that this doesn't work, and that's okay. But the ones that can you start exploring what this looks like? And that's where I'm kind of moving into in 2026 is matching up the top talent looking for this and the organizations looking for that top talent. How do we figure this out? Because there is definitely multiple paths to get to that outcome. So emotional labor, how are we managing that? The 4th one is lack of clarity, and we're going to get into that in a little bit more. That is coming from mostly leaders. I asked leaders this one question. I'm going to pull your whole job description away. What would you work on? What would be of value? What is something that you would go home at the end of the night and be like, yeah, I made a difference? Most leaders cannot ask that, which shows lack of clarity in their roles and responsibilities, lack of clarity of the actual value that they bring. So the more you can get clear on roles and responsibilities and the value people's positions and functions and skill sets bring, the more energy you bring. And it gets very clear of who to assign people where, what projects to put them on, and it aligns people's passions back into the job. Right now, we're just doing things to do things sometimes. We're promoting leaders and they have something they want to achieve, and we completely discount it or overload them that they can't work on it. Getting rid of those passion projects. We're moving away from purposeful work. And we know when people are in the zone, they naturally work harder. They work high quality and they're creative. So let's channel that. And there's a few steps we do in workforce energy management to get there. Now, the 5th one I want to talk about is high responsibility with low control variables, which means they want an outcome, but they're not willing to adjust the way to get there. So the outcome is most likely going to fail. And you're in that struggle bus all the way there, like you were set up for failure. It reminds me of like going on a long hike and you know it's going to rain, but there's no poncho available. You know you're going to need food because you're going to be out there for hours, and there's no food packed, right? No tools for the job. You know that you might get lost. You don't have a compass. It's going to be hot out in between that rain and humid. You need water, and there's no water sources, right? The end outcome to get there is so much more difficult than some of that prep work that we need to do. So when we strip down process flows and things like that across departments, we really start to see what are the tools needed for the job. What's the communication, the steps, the pass-offs to make sure that that end outcome is not such a treacherous trail to get to. Because when you really look at a process flow, it can be some simple steps. It's just understanding that role clarity and the value that each person brings and what fits where. Now, Now that we dug into that, you can see that wellness programs do not fix any of these energy drains. The top 5 energy drains that I just went over in organizations that I'm working with, wellness programs won't fix that. Again, wellness programs are a great tool. They were never supposed to be the main program. Telling people to set boundaries and have a work and life balance, but not providing an environment for it is, again, a losing battle. So let's set up people for success. So let's talk about the shifts, all right? Let's get into some of the workforce energy management tools that I use, so you can begin to implement these at your organization. The first one is energy flow. I talked about kind of a process flow in your workload, from a customer ordering something all the way to execution, all those hands that touched that order. What does that look like? But also, let's go one forward. What does that energy flow look like? If you are expecting a very detailed, orientated role to be interrupted constantly and still get their work done, that's not possible. That's an energy drain, right? You have 2 different requirements of this job right now: a very focused part of the function and a very interrupted in and out short term type of answer, all demanding their attention at once. So when I talk about employee capacity outside of this process flow, this is what I'm talking about: the highs and lows of your day. Where's your energy draining? How do you reset? Where's your energy draining? Where can you mitigate some of that drain? Where your energy is high, that's where creative problem solving, those really deep work hours need to happen. And this can be different amongst every team and every individual, depending on their work style. So when you break down energy flow throughout your day and you honor that, energy naturally appears. You don't go home at the end of the night completely drained. So we do some energy flow kind of analysis, not only as a team, how does functions and things flow. We're not just doing things to do things, we're going to do them very intentionally, but also as individuals, so we can protect our energy. The second thing that we do often in these programs is energy mapping. Who actually does what? And it's interesting when we do this, because one department usually does more than they should, or it will come out double duty work. So sales and customer service might be doing double touch moments in which they're adding more work, but they don't necessarily need to be doing it both. So the team mapping type of concept really clears up who owns what and when do we pass off. What happens when you need a decision maker? What happens when you need to troubleshoot? And it really just clears the air of that cross department functions in which we drop the ball, we lose the energy, those ineffective pass offs. So this is part of the actual work redesign online course. This whole process, spreadsheets are all in there. It's on demand. You can go ahead and download it there. Or you can practice this yourself. This is oftentimes a great time to bring in a third-party person, because when you are stuck in that day-to-day operations inside the same walls all the time, sometimes you don't see the gaps and overlaps, and a third-party person has those new sets of eyes to challenge the team, and really clean up some of those dysfunctional moments that they might be seeing. So those are 2 great tools that we focus on, is not just process flow of how we're going to execute the work, but honoring that energy flow of the team and individual, and then who does what through team mapping. Now, when we talk about protecting energy, let's also talk about protecting focus time, protecting that bandwidth between departments. I had some situations in HR, which I sat next right to accounting, and people would need things from accounting, and it would be month end. And for those of you that don't know what happens in accounting month end, basically they're closing the books for the month. They're closing up billing. They're getting payables out. They're trying to wrap up all the financials in the month to make sure that the business can operate in a healthy manner. And people will come down this hallway and just instantly request things, like those quick ask avalanches. And I would be like in my office, like, leave them alone. They need like 3 days to wrap this month up so they can start kicking off the next month. This is how we all get paid. This is how this business operation maintains healthy. But a lot of people don't know that. So when we talk about protecting focus and decision-making bandwidth, I think a lot of that has to do with transparency. When is each department's busy time? How can we honor that? How can we protect that so they can do their thing, provide their value, and we all support them on that journey? But oftentimes we're in our own silos and it's important to me but not important to them, so I'm going to hound them, or I'm going to quick walk down there, I'm going to send them a chat, and you're interrupting them, and that's not their priority right now. So when departments can get transparent about their busy seasons, things where it's like, hey, you can contact me if an emergency, but otherwise I'm back on Thursday. I just need to hunker down right now and get this done. When you can do that as a team, you start to see this nice respect and kind of like psychological safety come back to the team, where they can have these open conversations of like, I'm at capacity for the next 2 days. Can we talk on Thursday? Type of conversations. Now, as an individual, you need to understand your own capacity in that. And a great tool to use is, what is your schedule? Right now, we use calendars to schedule our days. And someone challenged me on that and said, yeah, that's what the tool is meant for. And I said, right, it's a tool, but it's driving our days. Why are we not driving our days? And you can have intentionality around this. For example, a client that I worked with, it was completely chaotic all the time, very service orientated industry, so very response mode, and they're always chasing, always in reactive mode. And so we began sticking control variables into their week where we could. For example, in the morning, they began blocking off time. They wouldn't schedule certain service calls during that time with the office people. They had delegated people to answer the phone so that those core people running the business could have some focus, get some things done, wrap their head around, what am I working on this week? Then they jumped in communication and activities, those emails, those calls. But when you can start to intentionally take back pieces of your day, start doing these time blocks instead of all that context switching, that energy drain goes away. If I gave you 1 hour every morning when you got into work to do a purposeful thing, your passion project, that initiative, deep work, the rest of the day, as it runs away and all those interruptions and distractions come in, it's so much more at ease, right? Because you got the one thing done this morning or made progress on it, and that feels good, that sense of progress. But right now, what I'm seeing with all my clients is we can't catch up. We need more time. No, we need to work on less things that don't bring value. We need to be more intentional about what we're working on. So moving to an energy-based schedule off of those team mapping discussions we had and that energy flow discussion we just had is going to allow the team to not only respect those boundaries, but get more done of value, right? We're not going to add more. We're going to focus on things that have that impact. So this schedule's definitely a energy switch for a lot of teams because they recognize how much their calendar was driving their weeks, and weeks would go by and weeks would go by, and they couldn't really acknowledge how many work projects they were closing up, all the things that they were doing. So this really switched to an energy zone that had that proof of progress, but also you have control of something in your day. So that type of schedule is not meant for everyone, but certainly there's ways to incorporate that focus and deep work throughout your day. Now, the last thing I want to talk about for energy shift is, where is your burnout coming from? No company is the same. Some companies I work on communication. People aren't communicating. Some organizations I work on workflow, so that process flow, that energy flow that I was talking about. Some of them I just have to work on trust. No one's getting along, or there's a lot of change and movement going on in their organization, a lot of turnover, there's a lot of distress going on. So each organization is a little bit different, but what I wanted to bring to light here is, where is the burnout symptom coming from? Now, over 60 years of research has shown that these contributing factors are feeding burnout in organizations. So 60 years of research conglomerate, you might be in one or the other, you might even have a root cause in your organization that's not listed, but based on research, these are the 7 highest contributors to workforce burnout, which is the symptom that you're seeing. So I'm not going to go through all these because, like I said, it's very specific to each organization, but I just wanted to bring to light Some things to watch for. You're going to start seeing it in meetings, whether you're virtually or in person. You're going to see it in conversations. You're going to hear someone say something and be like, "Yep, that was one of the 7." So, workload imbalance. You have someone that is overloaded and someone that is underloaded and being very under responsible. How is that happening? Why is that happening? So that might be a root cause. Poor communication. It's upwards of like 70% of stress in workplaces right now is because of poor communication. We all know that email, that leader, that person that drains the energy. So that's where that's coming from, and why I work a lot on communication within teams. Lack of role clarity, which we talked about with that team mapping and energy flow already. Team distrust. So when you clear up these 3 already, clean up workload, and you're working on communication, you have role clarity, let me tell you, team distrust really reduces. There's not a lot of space for distrust because we just worked on all those trust factors already. Absence of recovery time. So that's the back to back meetings, that's the context switches that I was talking about. And then misaligned culture, which means like I'm in this role because I need to do this role financially or pay the bills or get benefits, but like your passion's not in it, your skill set's not in it, or you don't understand the value you bring. So that's misaligned culture. And then lack of autonomy, which is huge in as we move to future ways of working. Those autonomy factors, guess what? You need good communication, high trust, role clarity. Do you see how all these webs, the 7 root causes from research of what contributes to workforce burnout, do you see how they're all kind of interconnected? So when we talk about workforce energy management programs, we're not trying to do everything. We're focusing on the big hitters, the big energy drains, those things that in the beginning of this that you rated a 3. Sometimes organizations just need to clean up their meetings or receive some leadership training in change management. Some of them have to work a lot on their communication and trust. Everyone's a little different. So when we talk about moving away from talking about burnout to how are we managing the energy of our workforce, we're not lowering the standards. We're not even doing less. If anything, we're doing less of the unproductive things draining our energy. And workforce energy management programs are guided towards how are we sustaining performance, providing that value, with preventing the burnout naturally by cleaning up our operational systems that feed productivity. Because if you think about it, we're increasing communication and trust, we're cleaning up our systems, our pass-offs, we are focusing on things of value and impact. Naturally you will gain productivity. Naturally all that waste and the drains and the dramas go away. So if you're thinking, wow, we've been stuck in this rut, we're in this revolving door of turnover, or we just keep talking about things and we're not actually doing things, let's connect on what your workforce energy management program might look like for your organization, because something about how we're doing this isn't working anymore. And workforce energy management isn't about doing more. It's about showing up differently for yourself and for your team.